Requested not to rush and override orders.
On behalf of Rourkela Steel Plant and RSTV, welcomes you all in today's program. I request all to put their mobile phone in silent mode, please, during the program. To stand in honor of our national anthem, please.
तव शुभ नामे जागे, तव शुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तब जय गाथा। जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता। जय हे जय हे जय हे
Today's session by hearty welcoming everybody present here. Top management of Rourkela Steel Plant, executive directors, in charges, chief general managers, head of departments, our colleagues. Today we have gathered here for an inspiring.
Respected executive directors, esteemed speaker this evening and star attraction of this evening, Sister B.K. Gopi ji, whom we all fondly call Gopi Didi, and other members of the Brahma Kumaris, chief general managers, heads of departments, my dear colleagues and friends from different departments of Rourkela Steel Plant, NSPCL, CISF, Commandant CISF, ladies and gentlemen. A very good evening, Namaskar, Om Shanti. It gives me great pleasure and privilege to be the host this evening at HRDC, where we have the honor and privilege of having such an eminent speaker amidst us. Coming to the context in which we are meeting, I think just as we know that there's one thing that is permanent in life and that is change, I think obstacles is another way of seeing things. Obstacles, impediments, hurdles, no matter what name you give, that's also a constant in all our lives. But then, as we say that life must go on, the show must go on, and we are doing that, be it in our personal and professional lives. How we surmount, how we navigate, it all depends on us, because change or obstacle is not in our hand. What is in our hand is the choices that we make, how we respond, how we choose to react. So I think in the sum and substance of this evening will be how we can enjoy life, enjoy the experience of living, and have a series of better experiences in life rather than having too many bitter experiences. Without much ado, now I will once again like to welcome each one of you to this evening, and let me have the privilege of welcoming Gopi Didi onto the stage. I would request Lakhay Marandi ji to please escort her. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your round of hands together. Thank you so much for coming, and please I would request you to take the best way to show our love, respect, affection. So what we are going to do is I'll request CGM in charge, Finance and Administration, Nigam sir, to please do the honors of presenting. Thank you, sir. May I now request CMO in charge to please come on. I would now request CGM in charge. May I now request and do the honors of presenting. I would now like to request all. This is all wrapped in our love, respect, and reverence. Her foundational work over the last 27 years has been developing and promoting the arena of inner leadership for young adults globally. She has overseen the growth of the International Youth Forum since the early 90s, which is a network of some 8,000 young adults across 49 countries who experiment with the principles of inner leadership and design programs for their peers across the spectrum of young professionals to disadvantaged youth. Over the last 5 years, she has led an innovative approach for emerging young leaders in Oman called Choose, Change and Become. The guiding light of her belief is very simple, but very profound. She says, only when you learn to see differently, think differently and feel differently, will you be able to make a difference. Quality of thought and intention makes the biggest difference. Some of her other initiatives are the Feminine Renaissance, Global Executive Retreats, the future of power. There have been many topics from which we thought of what to choose, and this was found to be the most contemporary and relevant that I felt, and that's how we present that topic and Shri BK Gopi Didi to you. It's over to you.
Om Shanti and Namaste to all my brothers and sisters here. I am very humbled to be here with you this afternoon, and I'm also very grateful that you all have taken the time to come and hear me speak. And you know, today I was thinking about what to share with you on this topic, because I've spent so many years traveling around the world, trying to find ways to bring a spiritual education into all walks of society. And it sometimes means you have to change the pitch, you have to change the language, you have to work with different topics to be able to meet people where they are. But you know, today, I feel like talking to you about somebody very special, whom I've learned from very, very deeply and powerfully some fundamental life lessons. I don't know how many of you are aware of Dani Janki Ji, who was the former administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris. She was a pioneering figure who carried the services of the BKs abroad in 1974 and oversaw the expansion of the Brahma Kumaris in over 120 countries worldwide. We now, to this day, have centers, over 5,500 centers in 120 countries worldwide because of this person. And apart from her many abilities, she was a spiritual yogi and a master, my personal mentor and friend. And today there will be aspects within the presentation, within my speech, that will help us to navigate what it is that we have to develop inside ourselves to handle the obstacle course of life. And I want to put here a little bit of a personal story, apart from the many different hats that I have to wear in the Brahma Kumaris. Because let me tell you, the Brahma Kumaris are not a regular spiritual organization. We use the term disciples in a religious context, but for the Brahma Kumaris, everybody is a student and a volunteer. And so we have over 1.1 million volunteer BK students around the world. And this is an NGO registered with the United Nations. And within this whole movement, we provide a service to communities worldwide. And of course, when you're in the business of providing any kind of service, and ours is that of a spiritual education, very much you need an organization behind it to support it. And yet in this particular movement, you can't hire anybody and you can't fire anybody. And you have to work with who's in front of you, because the souls that come in front of you come with a quality of heart, with a quality of intent, and a certain capacity. And if I was to put in front of you all the sisters who run our centers just in this country alone, combined total of thousands of years of experience of handling difficult situations, impossible scenarios with grace, humility, and dignity. And to this day, I'm very proud to be able to stand in front of you to say that I am one of those Brahma Kumaris. I'm very much remembering Daddy Janki at this moment. And one of the things that was often part of the role that I was designated with was sending me into places where there was conflict. Sending me into perhaps countries where things weren't moving so smoothly, to put it mildly. And many times people would think, well, how can a faith-based organization that has such high ideals experience conflict? Well, actually, studies have shown that the highest level of conflict often exists in faith-based movements. You know why? Because they set high ideals and then come with reality, and often the dissonance that that gap creates can create a potential for conflict. And of course, it's not as big and as large scale, it's relative. And so over the years, I learned from Daddy Janki what it meant to truly become obstacle-free in myself, in my perception, and in my handling of situations. It's been a big learning curve, but some of those stories and insights I'd like to share with you today. Now, I wanted to start with this statement that obstacles are an opportunity to create something new. You know, when you look up the word obstacle in the Oxford Dictionary, you find the word impediment. And impediment is like an obstruction. So whenever there's any obstruction to action, it actually inspires more action. And in many ways, that makes the obstacle that's in the way forward. And that's one of the secrets I learned early on, that any obstacle that comes in the way is the way. So that's one of the first steps I want to start with. And the second thing, something that our Daddyji would say, you know, this is a jungle of thorns. And within a jungle of thorns, you're not going to complain that a thorn pricked your foot and blame the thorn. You're going to take care as to where you're going to put your feet to walk through this jungle of thorns unharmed. And so at a certain level, you have to equip yourself. Yes, physically, yes, mentally, but also spiritually, to move beyond emotions such as pain, such as fear, such as hopelessness, such as disheartenment. It doesn't matter what your intellectual or mental capacity may be, or your IQ may be, but there are two quotients that are very important in today's world, and that's the emotional quotient and the spiritual quotient. And you know, one of the things that I really like is sometimes in life everything goes smoothly. This is one of my favorite images. And sometimes unexpected things happen. And when they happen, the most important thing is knowing how to turn those problems into opportunities. And so what's required inside me to be able to refocus myself, to be able to transform something that appears problematic into an opportunity? And I came to understand the difference between two words. One is a problem, and often with a problem is linked an emotion. So I might have a problem with you, but you might not have a problem with him. Correct? And I have a problem with him because I don't feel very good towards him. But you feel okay with him. So who has the problem? Me. Right? But in my world, this person is the problem. Now, a problem which has an emotional component attached to it is very different to a predicament. A predicament is like a puzzle that needs to be solved. It's just a complicated situation that needs to be solved. And in my practice of meditation for 40 years, I've learned how to position myself inside so that I can start to see everything without the emotion attached to it. So that it just becomes a puzzle that needs to be sorted. And where do we start with that? You can see from this drawing, you have the event, whatever the event is that's problematic or an obstacle or an issue or a person, you have the event. And what instantly happens inside your psyche is that as the event happens, from your belief systems, your ideas, your own emotional capacity, you give that event meaning. You give it some significance for you. And that's what creates the emotion. Because you've given it a meaning. If you don't give an event a meaning, no emotion surfaces. It's like saying, it's like judging something. You know, giving meaning to something isn't always positive. You judge something or someone. You've given it a limited meaning. And as a result of that, you are going to provoke an emotion inside. And so this is the dynamic that happens inside us all the time when we face people, when we face situations, when we face anything. We have inside here a certain fabric of DNA that has a certain amount of acquired knowledge, experience, that triggers to give meaning to something, whether it's good or bad or right or wrong or positive or negative. And one of the things that helps when we have a practice of self-reflection is you can start to detach yourself from the meaning you're giving to something so that you can remain objective in what you have to handle. So when we're giving meaning to something, what are we doing? And there are three things, as you can see on the side, that help us to give meaning to something. One is understanding the why of the situation, the context, what's happening to it, what are the facts, what's happening in the situation. The second is my perspective, my vision on it, my drishtikund, as they say in Hindi. How am I actually seeing this? Is it a problem? Is it an opportunity? And the third is my perception. which is what am I understanding about it? And sometimes we have one of these three, sometimes we have two of these three. If you have all three, then you're doing very well, because you can bring accurate meaning to something. But most times, we don't understand. We don't have a clear perception of what's happening. Or perhaps we don't understand the context of what's happening. So inevitably, one of these three is limited, which then enables us to create emotion. But the most powerful here, the most powerful aspect of being able to transform an event or something from being problematic into an opportunity is perception. Now, perception, जैसे हम हिंदी में कहते हैं, बुद्धि की आँख, बुद्धि में समझ है, बुद्धि से समझ से हम काम लेते हैं, we're creating a perspective. When there's no understanding, everything appears to be a problem. You are at the lowest level of perception, right? Everything feels difficult because you're not educated in that area, you don't have any skills, you don't have insight, so everything feels like a problem. As you upgrade your perception, then from a problem, an obstacle is something with a little bit more hope because you can still overcome it. Yeah, it's a bit difficult, but there's still margin to overcome an obstacle. And then from an obstacle, when you upgrade your perception, you create an opportunity. Because in the heart of every obstacle is a golden nugget. And if you can find what is in this obstacle that is struggling to come out and help it to come out, you have just discovered an opportunity for growth. You know, when you think of these tiny little seedlings, these seedlings, they can grow through concrete, right? And they're tiny, and this massive block of concrete, and yet they're finding their way through concrete. And every obstacle you're faced with has that kind of seedling in it. It's about training your perception to see it. Because when you see it, that's your opportunity. And that's when you upgrade your perception to seeing the opportunity for growth. And then as you go further, of course, just because you see an opportunity doesn't mean that the road is clear for growth. And you've made a decision, you're going to support something to grow. Then you have to face some tests. And tests only have one purpose: to create a deeper sense of resolve and determination. You have to be tested so that you can see how far you've come. And you know, at this stage, it's okay to fail. You have to be okay with failing. Because when you fail a test, you're then double motivated to pass the next one. And so at this stage of your perception, where you start to perceive something as a test, it's a challenge for you to pass something. And then of course, the outcome of that is when you learn to see the tofa, the gift in every tufan. And truly, when you have mastered your perception to this level, Daddy Genki was an individual that had done that. We would come to Daddy with difficult situations, problems we were facing in countries. You can imagine to register the Brahma Kumaris in a variety of countries abroad with different legal frameworks, financial capacities. It was no small task. And we would come to Daddy with our issues. And Daddy would train us how to perceive something. She would train us how to see people. And within that process, one of the biggest gifts I received was the gift of meditation, of building especially two capacities that help me as an individual to retrain my perception. This is what we call a spiritual capacity. Okay? We've developed IQ, a lot of hard skills, EQ, a lot of soft skills, communication skills, time management skills, stress management skills. But the SQ, the spiritual quotient, is something much deeper. Because the spiritual quotient is linked to the willpower inside the human soul. If you don't have the willpower to do something, you don't have a sense of self-value, it doesn't matter how many resources you have at your disposal, you will not be able to do anything. And so I feel what the Brahma Kumaris brings onto the table is the strengthening of the spiritual quotient. And where do we start? You know, when people say, what does it mean to go inside and meditate and find yourself, and how is it possible that you can find the solutions for the problems of the world from inside out? Surely you have to apply yourself to the problem. Yes, but where you apply yourself from, the position you apply yourself from, creates the outcome. There's a formula. And it's the formula linked to the law of karma. Intention plus action equals result. Intention plus action equals result. But what percentage of intention and what percentage of action? So result is 100%. You want 100%. What do you think? What percentage should intention be? What do you think? And what percentage should action be? 80% intention. Okay, and 20% action. Okay, anybody else? 50-50? Who goes for 50-50? 50-50? Okay. Well, studies have told us you're closer to the mark. 70% intention plus 30% action equals 100% of the resultant outcome. So already within our studies, we're learning that a huge part of our focus has to be internal in order to maximize the result and the output of something. And yet, we focus on the action. We focus on the efficiency of something. And when we do 70% action and 30% intention, what's your result going to be? 50%? That's 70 minus 30. So I remember one time coaching a young man in Greece who was running one of our centers. And after 2 years, he was a civil engineer by profession, and he had a full-time job working for one of the big companies in Athens. And he came to me after 2 years of running the center, the main Brahma Kumari's center in Athens. He came to me and he said, "Sister, I've learned something very powerful whilst living at the center." I said, "What is it?" He said, "I've learned that in order to get results, you have to develop the formula of 70% harmony, 30% efficiency. If I focus on creating harmony, I will eventually get the efficiency. But if I focus on the efficiency within the center context, sometimes I can lose the harmony and the efficiency. And I said, welcome to the world of spiritual intelligence. Creating harmony is a very powerful skill. And it requires us to serve with a pure intent, and it requires us to understand other people's intentions. Right? And when I talk about intentions, I'm not just talking about, the corruption of intention. I'm talking about one layer deep, the needs of souls. Now, coming back to what I was saying earlier, when I was talking about building two capacities. The first capacity, and I want to show you this particular slide. Very simple, I want to end with this. I call it the science of inner transformation. And this is the roadmap that helps us to transform the way we think and feel that will ultimately transform the 30% of action and create focused action to achieve the desired outcome. And this is why you can have greater success through less expenditure. Now, I use words, I've written them in English, but in Hindi, smriti, vritti, drishti, and kritti. And I'll explain them. I'm going to start from the bottom, kritti, our actions, and the quality of our actions. All of us understand there is an ethical and moral standard of behavior, of respect. And in every one of our situations, we are called to draw on some of those capacities. So if your boss yells at you at work, what are you called upon to do in that moment? To exercise patience, humility, forgiveness in that moment. If you're stuck in a traffic jam, what are you called to do? It's an opportunity to listen to your favorite music. Every incident in your life is an opportunity for you to act with grace if you choose to. Before that, what determines your action is definitely your vision. हिंदी में कहावत है ना, जैसी दृष्टि वैसी सृष्टि. Quite literally, what you hold in your mind's eye will and has to manifest. And yet the root of what appears in our vision is deeply lies in our attitude. Manuvritti. And you know what? I learned a secret on the way. That whatever it is I hold in my attitude that is harmful to me or to someone else will eventually manifest as an obstacle in my life. That's what I've learned after many, many years of hurdling obstacles. And I've come to realize that the deep level of transformation of keeping a clean and clear attitude is fundamental to creating an obstacle-free path moving forward. And yet, going even deeper, the roots of our vritti lie in smriti. And I'm going to use the word awareness for this. What am I aware of every day? Because awareness is a source of power. And we don't enough pay attention to this level. Which is why then the flow So one of the things that a spiritual practice does for an individual is it resets your awareness every day. Science tells us the first 10 to 15 minutes when you wake up in the morning, whatever you think and feel and the awareness you set in those first 10 to 15 minutes will create your entire mood for the day. Entire mood. Mood is powerful because mood governs perception. If you wake up and you create a good mood, everything looks good, right? Even if it's raining, it feels good. But if you wake up and you get up on the wrong side of the bed and you're in a bad mood, everything. You're irritated by the slightest thing happening, even if it's a beautiful day outside. That's how powerful mood is. Mood is deeply connected to feelings. Awareness is deeply connected to my feelings for myself. What do I hold and feel about myself? And that's why one of the first practices we have in Raj Yoga meditation is you have to reset your awareness back into the being inside. आत्मिक स्मृति को जागृत करना। और वो सुबह के टाइम जब हम जागृत करते हैं उसको, तो उसकी जो भासना आती है, उसमें शक्ति भरी हुई होती है, प्रेम भरा हुआ होता है, शांति भरी होती है। And when a mood is created with all these feelings, your vibrations is your fortress. Whatever you do in the day, if you have a pure vibration around you, nothing impure can touch you. Because it's a different frequency. And so, first of all, every morning, this is our practice. We wake up at 4 o'clock every morning, 45 minutes. I've been doing it for 40 years. And I can tell you something. It works, and it works powerfully. So before I move on, I'd like to invite you into an experiment. Is that okay? So can I ask you to sit up straight in your chairs, please? And just rest your arms on your lap. And I'm going to take you through a little bit of a tension releasing exercise, okay, first of all. And then take you into soul awareness, Atmik Smriti. So just become aware of yourself sitting on this chair. Feel your legs. And I'd like you to tighten all the muscles in your feet and legs. Tighten your toe muscles, ankle muscles, thigh muscles, leg muscles, and release. And again, tighten all the muscles in your legs as tight as you can, and release. And now tighten all the muscles in your stomach and chest area. Pull your stomach in and release. And once more. And release. And now tighten all the muscles in your arms and hands. So make a fist with your hand and tighten all the muscles in your shoulder, arms, neck area, and release. And again. Now tighten all the muscles in your body, all at once. Everything. Feet, arms, legs, stomach, hands. And release. And again. And release. Great. Now take a couple of deep breaths in through your nose. Hold it. breathe out slowly. And as you breathe out, breathe in and breathe out. Just allow any tension in your body to be released. And allow your breathing to become soft and gentle. And feel yourself relaxing inside. Whatever has happened is the past. Whatever is the future is yet to come. And now, let's turn our attention inwards. And you become aware that you are a person that has many roles and identities. And yet, who are you inside? Start to feel the energy of the soul inside. It's a very subtle, living energy that gives life to this body. The soul is listening through these ears, speaking through this mouth. I am this life force. And now visualize all this energy rising up through your body and concentrating behind the eyes in the center of the forehead. This life force, Brahma, this Chaitanya Shakti gathers and becomes a star of light behind the eyes. And for a few moments, you start to experience peace. And now in your mind, I want you to say to yourself 3 times, very slowly, I am a star of peace. And let yourself feel it. I am a star of peace. I am a star of peace. It's okay if other thoughts come, let them go. Just keep saying this to yourself. And allow your mind to be filled with peace. Thank you. A few moments every day like this will help you to reset your awareness over a period of time. And this is what you have to do first thing in the morning every day. And when that happens, then when we come onto the playing field of life, You walk in to your office in the morning. You walk into your professional job, your context. Then the show begins. Then what do you do? Things happen, energy changes. And this is where the second practice is very, very useful. We call it Sakshi in Hindi. And Sakshi literally means the one that observes with detachment. Yeah? The one that observes with detachment. Okay? It doesn't mean you are detached from everything. It means you are observing from a place of detachment. So this is the second capacity. You have to do the first. That's the foundation of creating peace. क्योंकि शांति में न्यूट्रलिटी होती है. शांति एक रीसेट बटन होता है. उसमें सारी बातें न्यूट्रलाइज हो जाती हैं. जितनी शांति की शक्ति जमा करते हैं ना, तो इमोशंस कम होते जाते हैं. संतुष्टता पैदा होती है. उसके बाद जब कर्म भूमि में आते हैं, कर्म क्षेत्र में आते हैं, एक्शंस के लिए, तो you have to learn the art of being sakshi, a detached observer. How many of you go to the movies here? You watch films? How many of you watch films? Yeah, okay, great. So what happens when you watch films? What happens to you when you watch a film? What happens?
Sometimes we feel sorry, sometimes more emotional.
If you go on a roller coaster ride of feelings, right? If the person in the movie is crying, you start crying. If they're dancing, you start dancing. If they're laughing, you start laughing. I'm amazed how one film can control an audience of 400 people. Emotionally, it's incredible. This habit of getting absorbed into a scene is a very powerful habit. And we take this habit into our lives. If you were to think of all of this as the theatre of life, and every morning you're walking in, you have a job description, you have a role in that theatre, you have a role to play, everybody else has their roles to play, you are just moving through scenes of a drama. Now, if you were to let yourself get absorbed in every single scene that's happening to every single person, what's going to be your state? Depressed? Emotional? Unstable? Fluctuating? And that's what we're doing all the time. All the time. It's quite a powerful analogy. You know, there was a young man who came from the villages somewhere in North India, and he got a good job in Mumbai, and from his job he decided to bring a gift back to the village. And the gift was a big Samsung 65-inch TV screen and a copy of the latest Bollywood film. So he brought it to his village, and he had a showing. You know, they have the main area in the village where all the community assembles. So he put everything together, started playing the film. First time they had actually seen a film, so the locals were very excited. And of course, you know the Bollywood story. Boy meets girl, boy falls in love with girl, then a villain comes, attacks the boy, and then he's the hero, he overcomes the villain and marries the girl, and end of story. Typical storyline, right? So when at the point in the film that the villain is attacking the hero comes, you know what the locals start to do? They pick up their slippers and they start throwing it at the television screen to try and make the villain stop. They can't distinguish that that's not real. And how I know that sounds funny on one level, but if you think about it in terms of your everyday life, how involved are you getting into the scenes of the drama that's unfolding around you? This is one of the core reasons why things feel problematic, because you don't know how to observe. Right? Now this next practice, I'm going to take you into it, because this is a very beautiful capacity to develop. And if you're able to master this capacity, it's not difficult, but it takes practice. You will find yourself being able to move through the different dramas in your life, be it the drama at home, between the kids fighting, or the mother, the wife, the spouse fighting, or something else happening, good or bad. You will be able to move through scenes from a place of stability and objectivity. So, I'm going to guide you through another visualization. So I'd like you to sit up straight again and just follow my words. And if your mind wanders off, it's okay. Just bring it back to the words that are being offered. So once again, just take a couple of deep breaths and relax. And just allow yourself to rest for a few moments. Bring your attention fully into this moment now. And now, I'd like us to turn our attention inside and visualize a room behind your eyes. This is the room of your mind. Walk up to the door of the room and open it. Go inside. If there's anybody else there, ask them to come back later, because this is time for you. And as you go inside this room, imagine it as you wish. This is your personal and private space. Decorated however you wish to make it comfortable. And now in the middle of that room is a comfortable chair or sofa. Go and sit down. And as you relax into that sofa, just let yourself take off all the labels, the roles you've played today, and just enjoy the comfort of that chair. And now in front of you, there is a large window from floor to ceiling, big window. And as you look out of the window, you see a busy street. Lots of cars, lots of traffic, lots of noise. The wind is blowing, the trees are bending in the wind. And as you continue to observe what is happening outside, you feel how quiet the room is inside. I am inside, and everything that is happening is outside. And the more chaotic it is outside, the more peaceful it feels inside. And once again, in this place, say to yourself 3 times in your mind, I am a being of peace. I am a being of peace. I am a being of peace. Feel the quietness inside. And whatever is happening outside passes by. And now slowly open your eyes, look out in front of you, and remain aware of yourself inside as you look out. Thank you. Very simple practice, done daily, builds the position of a detached observer. And it allows you to first identify the obstacle inside. Because the obstacle often is at the level of the vritti. There's something I'm holding on inside, something from the past, some pain, some sorrow, some reaction, some judgment. And the longer I hold on to that, the more obstacles I find in my path, because what is inside has to manifest outside. It's the law. And so as I start to become a detached observer, then I can have more compassion for myself. And I can have more compassion for what is in front of me. Compassion is such an important energy because compassion is a manifestation of God's love. And if you can't have compassion, then you can't have a big heart. And if you can't have a big heart, then you can't overcome any obstacles. It's as simple as that. And so the takeaway from this, and I can know time is running, is I purposely built in a couple of activities so that we could start practicing this method. Anything that you want to develop, you need to practice. The first few times, it always feels hard, but practice, and you start to create that habit. And what you start to do by practicing is you build your power base inside. The reason why obstacles feel big, and because we feel small. If you feel big, the obstacle feels small. It's very simple. And so by practicing this, you build your power base, your energy base inside. You make yourself feel big. And then everything. It's like this. And you know, many times we would go in front of Daddy, and she would say to us, "Don't think." And I said to her, "What do you mean, don't think? You have to think." And I remember there was a businessman from Kuwait who had come, who was very fond of Daddy. He was linked to the royal family in Kuwait, and he especially came for 2 days to meet her. And Daddy's mantra for a certain period of time had been, "Don't think." And he said to her, "Look, I'm a businessman. I have a proposal that I have to put forward to the Sultan of Oman in 2 weeks. I have a team of 25 people working on this proposal, and you're telling me don't think? What do you mean?" And Daddy gave a very beautiful response. Daddy said, "What I do for myself is I keep myself free from 2 thoughts. One, I have to do something. Yeah? You know what you have to do. You don't need the extra addition of I have to do something. Whatever you have to do, you have to do. You don't need to put pressure on your mind with I have to." The second thought is after you've done something, I've done something. Right? You've done something, you own what you did, and you go, I did this. Daddy keeps herself free from these 2 thoughts. Because just think about it. We tend to take ownership of things very, very fast. It's human nature to take ownership. I was telling the class this morning, you're sitting on these wonderful chairs, right? What is it? You sit here for about 10-15 minutes, go to the bathroom, come back. Where are you going to come back to? Exactly the same chair and the same place. And if somebody else is sitting there, what are you going to say? "Oh, they're sitting in my chair." Right? So in 10 minutes it became your chair? That's how fast we take ownership. No wonder we experience problems, because we create them by taking ownership really fast. And this was a trick Daddy Janki learned very early on. It's not a trick, it's a reality. What do you own, in fact? You can say, "I own a house." Did you build a house yourself? Did you create the bricks and mortar for that house? No. In reality, you don't own anything. And the quicker we come to understand that, the quicker we develop the ability to let go fast. Because all of our reactions, almost 90% of our reactions, come from taking ownership of something that doesn't belong to us. Somebody else has it. And so keeping ourselves free inside from thoughts that want to take ownership, I have to do something, or I have done something, creates a space, creates mental space for us to allow to accumulate peace inside. And I cannot stress and underline more how important this is now. As important oxygen is for the human body, the experience of peace is oxygen for the soul and for the mind. So with these words, I'd like to stop here and say thank you for your attention, thank you for your grace, thank you so much for gracefully welcoming me here, and I hope that from this last hour there's been something that's been useful for you. Thank you.
ओम शांति। ऐसा जो अनुभव हुआ है हम लोग को, जो फील है, तो वाकई हम लोग जो फील कर किए पिछले आधे घंटे में, एक वंडरफुल सेशन था मैम सिस्टर। और इसमें इसके लिए अगर किसी का कुछ ऐसा क्वेश्चन है, इस तो हाउस ओपन है इंटरेक्शन के लिए। अपने सारे क्वेश्चंस को थोड़ा ब्रीफ एंड शॉर्ट रखेंगे ताकि हम सभी पर्सन्स को जो भी इसमें विलिंग फुल है इस क्वेश्चंस को अपने आप रखने के लिए, तो वो एकोमोडेट हो सकें। ओके, कोई भी
फेल्ट रियली राइट इनसाइड। और असर तो साफ दिख रहा था, हम सोच रहे थे इसके बारे में, लेकिन एक मेरी जिज्ञासा ये है कि जो सारी बातें आपने कही, जो भी सारी बातें आपने कही हम उसे समझते हैं, जब तक बातें चलती हैं हम उसे अंतर्निहित करते हैं, उसको उसी तरीके से करते हैं जिस तरीके से बताया जाता है। लेकिन एक बार हम अपने वर्क एरिया, वंस वी गो आउट ऑफ द रूम टू आवर वर्क एरिया, we forget everything and then continue doing the same thing. To avoid those things, we have come here, assembled here. How to get rid of those feelings, come back again quickly so that we feel enlightened again and again every time. Thank you.
There is a word called kaizen. Kaizen means continuous improvement. Yeah? And the methodology of kaizen is to master 1 minute. Because it's not about how much time. It's about the sanskar or the habit that's created in that time. So why I made you practice it together, so that we start sowing the seeds of that habit now. Whenever we go out into our routine, we have to take a minute. 1 minute, set a time, 1 minute. Practice this. That's it. And this is something that the Japanese have mastered. Any field you want to master, be it fitness, be it food, whatever, you have to master 1 minute of it. And the moment you do that, within that 1 minute, your whole neurology adapts to the practice. Your mind responds to the practice. Your body responds to the practice. Every day, that minute at that time, and after a period of time, suddenly your body and your mind will remember. Smriti will stay automatically. You understand? It's mastering 1 minute. That's the method of continuous improvement. Yes, it is important to pay attention to 2 times in your life. And that is how you go to sleep at night and how you wake up in the morning. You know why? Because a big part of your identity is based on your memories, your smriti inside, very deep subconscious. What happens when you go to sleep at night and you haven't cleared your conscious mind, everything that you've collected in your conscious mind, when you go to sleep, it goes into your long-term memory. It seeps into your subconscious. And as it seeps into your subconscious, if it's a lot of stuff, like you've watched a horrible movie or an action-packed movie or something like that, it creates disturbing dreams. Because what are dreams? It's the subconscious trying to sort out all this information you've collected. You wake up in the morning and you feel like you haven't slept. Right? How many of you have had this experience? Raise your hands. Yeah, we know what it feels like. And then you start your day like that. You collect more garbage here. You don't erase it, neutralize it. You go back to sleep again in that state. More dreams. And guess what? Slowly, slowly, your body adapts to this rubbish. And you start to enter a cycle of depression. It's very important before you go to bed to have 20 minutes where you let yourself forget everything. Our former administrative head, Dani Prakashmaniji, another mentor of mine, extremely light in her nature. She headed a worldwide organization, and yet you never saw any tension on her face. And I said to her, Dani, how do you stay so light? And she would say to me, well, at the end of every day, I just remember it's a drama. Act 1 of scene 1 is finished. Tomorrow, act 2 of scene 1 will start. So tomorrow's another day. And so it's so important to understand that there's an unfolding drama happening. And that I, as an actor, have left that drama now. It's time to go to bed. Which means take off the costume, take off the role, take off the detail, and let myself rest. Clear this. And this is where this practice of meditation helps. Because when you clear your conscious mind and you rest, very deep rest happens. 4 to 5 hours is enough for body regeneration. And then you wake up with a fresh mind. And when you start your morning, first 10-15 minutes, with powerful feelings, good feelings, you've set your mood for the day. You don't collect so much rubbish in the day. So what I've learned from these daddies, watching them, they would never go to bed at night just like that, never. They would have a period of meditation of 20 minutes or so. Completely clear everything, let go, give it all up to God. Release it out into the drama of life. Become small children inside and go to sleep. And if you do this for just 1 week, you will see a big difference in your state of mind. Okay, is that helpful? Thank you. Yes?
And how would you correlate deep consciousness, peace, with the left and the right brain, the divine capacity?
How do you correlate peace with the left and the right brain? Interesting question. The experience of peace is a spiritual experience. Spirit is something that is not physical. The brain is hardware, and what's in the spirit is software, in simple terms. And so within the DNA of the soul is a variety of pure feelings. Peace, love, goodness, compassion, bliss, joy. Now, when that gets activated in our awareness, it has the capacity to influence the hardware, the way the brain works. Okay? And in fact, I've noticed studies have shown that the more people regularly meditate, the more their ability to become creative enhances in life. And I'm not just talking about being creative in artwork and sports. I'm talking about innovation in perception, seeing things differently, viewing things differently, acting differently. So feelings are software and the brain is hardware. Now, our brains are imbalanced because we don't operate from the place of the soul. We operate from a place of influence, I would say logic, reason, and I'm not saying that these are bad things, but too much analysis will create paralysis. The other factor that influences your hardware is your actions. Right? You literally can change your brain by the way you think and act. In neuroscience, they tell us that the brain cannot perceive the difference between an imagined act and a real act. It's the same for the brain. And that's why for many people, when they think too much, then they convince themselves that they've done it, but they actually haven't done it. Now, it works, conversely, on a spiritual path, that when I generate this very deep identity of peace, it starts to bring balance in my brain functioning. So I understand very naturally, it happens so fast, it's not a conscious thing, but you know exactly how far to go in logic, how far to use reason, how far, when to stop, because your place from which you drive your hardware is a place of peace. So it has a very positive influence on your brain functioning. And it helps keep things in balance, and that's crucial. Absolutely crucial. Is that okay?
Hello, madam. Good evening. And one question is that the source of anxiety is mainly the fear of death and fear of diseases. And also, if there is any complex diseases to others, we always compare his disease with us. So, how can we control this? The fear of death and fear of diseases.
Thank you for your question. I recently had COVID in April, and I was in India at that time. I since went back to the UK and came back. And when I had COVID, one of the other sisters I was with also contracted COVID, but she got worse. And we were both taken to Ahmedabad, and I managed to get a bed, and she was coming a few days afterward, but there were no beds left for her. So I asked the doctor to give us a space where I would sleep on the couch and she could have my bed so she could have oxygen. And I remember the feeling at that time. I analysed how I got COVID. And I'm going to come to your question. I was taking care of two sisters that had contracted COVID. And I remember the night before my fever started, I only had one thought. This is too much for me. Because I was taking care of them, I had other things to do, and it had physically, I had reached a limit. And I let myself indulge in this thought, this is just too much for me. Next thing I know, I wake up next morning with a fever. And so the contraction of COVID for me was right at the end of the line. The entry point for disease is mental weakness. It's mental disease. And I know from my own experience of moving through that, I mean, I've had several in my life. I've had dengue, I've had COVID, lots of things in my life. And I know that the fundamental factor to moving through illness is to keep a determined mind. Never to let your mind give up. And when you give up, that's when the fear takes over. Now, fear is not something that you have to be afraid of. Fear is a byproduct of our not so good activity, right? You know, when you've done wrong things, think about the time in your life when you've lied. What did you experience when do you remember the first time you told a lie? Do you remember that moment when you first told a lie? Maybe not. Maybe too far back, right? But when you first tell a lie, what happens? A little bit, heart starts to go. You know you're telling a lie. Then you have two options. You tell the truth, release your mind, your conscience, or you tell another lie to cover up that lie. Now, which path did you take? If you took the path of telling the truth, you released your conscience and your mind from fear. But if you took the path of telling another lie, what did you do? You trapped the fear. You trapped the anxiety. And then it gets harder to tell the truth. Because then you have to confess that you told 2 lies. So then what? It's easier to tell another lie, and another lie, and another lie. Every time you tell a lie, you trap a bit of that fear inside. And at some point, uska hisab nikalta hai, and it manifests as disease. So it's really important. You know, within the practice of meditation, you have a deep sense of peace, but it's also like taking herbal medicine, makes all the sickness erupt. So all the dishonesty that we have accumulated over a long period of time that has trapped the fear, it suddenly starts to come out. And that will manifest. And so the answer is very simple. Keep still, keep moving. You don't stop because of fear. You learn, you stay determined, and you keep moving. After my period of having had dengue, I remember I had 3 years of very chronic bronchitis, and I was diagnosed with vertigo. You know vertigo? Where everything, a whole room goes round. And for 2 weeks I was in a very bad state, and I was hospitalized. And what started to happen to me was I started to have panic attacks. I don't think I've ever had a panic attack in my life. And I started to have major panic attacks. My body would freeze. And I went to the ENT specialist and I said to him, look, I'm a meditator for many years, but I'm having some major panic attacks. My body's freezing up here. What's happening? And he said to me, look, this is what's happening in your ear. When you're out of balance and you start to walk, your body has a previous programming. So it's now adjusting to this new state. Don't worry, just keep walking. It will rebalance itself. Don't stop. So his advice to me when I'm having a panic attack isn't to just stop and be still, like in terms of not do anything, just keep walking. It will balance itself. But know what's happening inside. And so it's the same way in our lives, you know? At some point, to be able to release ourselves from these trapped fears, we have to have the courage to have an honest conversation with ourselves. Face our conscience. Face those moments when we ignored our conscience. We did something that hurt somebody. And until you have reconciled with yourself, you won't be able to face your fear. Your fear will defeat. But this practice that we've practiced today, it is your medicine. It is the medicine as you go into the depth of the soul. You know, the greatest security that we experience is in the experience of eternity. When I deeply accept and understand that I, the soul, am eternal, I'm imperishable, there's such safety and security in that awareness, then I'm not afraid of anything. Fear is also linked to the human experience, because the human experience is not a straight line. It's victory, it's defeat, it's right, wrong, defamation, praise, it's up and down. So, who am I? Am I the human having these experiences? One moment great, one moment down, and then occasionally I stop and say, yeah, I have a soul somewhere. Or am I this eternal, imperishable soul just having a human experience? No big deal. Do you see the difference? And the more we practice meditation, the more we shift into that awareness of soul power. and it stabilizes our human experience. It's okay if I fail. It's okay if I win. It's okay if somebody defames me. It's okay if somebody praises me. The mark of dignity is when you remain neutral in praise, defamation, victory, defeat. Okay? Thank you. Yes.
Just a correlate must start.
Namaskar.
I will just explain two states of mind and perhaps look for advice on the second note. We are here agenda based. Every day, every start of the day, we start the day with some agenda. Try to accomplish with all our heart and mind, with all the resources that we have in our personal and professional life. And someday we accomplish. There is a state of mind of accomplishment. There is a state of mind of achievement and peace. That day, you don't have any worry when you go to bed and sleep. Maybe I am not able to count backwards day. But there are days when the level of accomplishment or achievements did not take place the way I wanted. And there are thoughts of regrets, a little bit of disturbance. All I wanted is to not to get named and that other things. But a choice of accomplishment always gives you pleasure. And we are all here for pleasure, happiness, whatever there in our life. In the second state of affairs, second state of mood, how to end the day with a very satisfactory mood and proceed to the next day. Say good morning. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that maybe the key here to understanding why we can't sustain a state of happiness, and that is, it didn't happen how I wanted it to happen. Yeah? When I was talking about ownership, a mindset of ownership, this is one of those factors. The first step is you have to disassociate from owning it. Yes, I have an agenda to follow. Let me do the best I can. And the reference point at the end of the day has to be, how many blessings did I give and receive today? If you can achieve an accomplishment in that, the amount of happiness giving and receiving good wishes does, these are subtle activities of the spirit that we ignore, because the more gross activities of the spirit, like concretely seeing an achievement, is more fruitful. And yet equally as fruitful is having a good wish for someone. It's equally as fruitful. And so for me, the answer to that is change your reference point for happiness. The reference point for contentment and happiness is not physical achievement. It is a deeper reference point of a state of feeling blessed. How many blessings did I receive from someone today? How many blessings did I give to someone today? It's simple. You know how when you've sat and you've generated good wishes for someone, it makes you feel good, right? Just one loving thought for someone makes your mind content. And if at the end of the day, you might not have physically accomplished what you wanted on your agenda, but you've achieved blessings, you are definitely content. And so sometimes, you know, we have to be careful the markers that we put for happiness. They're not physical markers. Let me tell you, our agenda in the day, it's impossible, because you are up against the drama of life. The drama is an authority. Everything has its own time for change. Doesn't matter how fast I want something to change, it will happen at its own time. And so there's a certain reframing. I can't manipulate drama. I can to a certain extent. It's very stressful. But why don't I just work with it? And you know, agenda creation, I'm going to come back to the beginning of the day. Do you know how I create my agenda? Yes, I have a role to play and there are certain things associated with that role. That's separate. But in the morning, I wake up and I have my meditation. And immediately after the meditation, I just visualize a large circle around me. And on that circle, I just put everything that I have to do as part of my thing. All the pieces in the pot. You know, like when you're cooking, you've got the dal, the rice, the sabji. Just like this. Having an agenda has got different issues cooking at different levels. And I just sit in the center of that circle in absolute peace. And I tune into the drama of life. And I feel what is the priority today. 3 or 4 things jump out at me. That's the basis on which I set my agenda that day. So I never set it from a place of expectation, duty. I have to tune into something much deeper. You know, there's things that speak to us loudly. Are we listening? Sometimes we ignore those things and do something else. And so with the practice of meditation, what inevitably starts to happen is you start to understand the hidden agenda under your agenda. And sometimes it's not obvious. But when you practice stillness, you feel it. It speaks loudly to you. And then you build your agenda in a very organic way. So you don't set yourself up to not achieve anything. Yeah? It's very important that happiness is disassociated from achievement. That happiness is my state of goodness, my state of being. It's my choice right now. I can choose to be happy just because I have love in my heart for you. Yeah, and so if my marker is an activity, yeah, I'm not the most skilled person in the world. I can do some things, I can't do other things. Then my happiness level will fluctuate with that marker. And you know, coming back to that, I'll tell you a little story about my father. It was my father that helped me to commit my life to being a Brahma Kumari. My mother wasn't supportive. And I remember the day that I was leaving university, I was leaving law school. It was very clear to me that I had to do this. And, you know, I'm an intelligent person. If it didn't work out, I could always go back and get another degree, not a problem. So I walked out of the dean's office that morning, and I woke up in the morning, I was determined I was going to resign from my course. I went to university, I resigned from my law course, I came back. And of course I took my father out into the garden and I said to him, Dad, you know what? I've just resigned. And this is what I need to do with my life. And God has blessed him with a lot of patience. So he listened to my wrangling for half an hour. I had no concrete plans for my future. All I knew was there was a powerful calling in my heart that I couldn't ignore, even though I didn't have a concrete plan. And you know, having listened to me for half an hour, at the end of the day, he said to me, the most important thing in life is your happiness. Whatever you choose for that, I will support you. You cannot imagine how liberating that moment was for you. He didn't take me down the guilt trip and say, well, if you don't get an education, how are you going to get a job? And if you don't get a job, how are you going to earn money? How are you going to live your life? He didn't give me any temporary markers for happiness. He took me straight to the core of what spiritual happiness happiness really is. And from that place, when you learn to follow your heart and learn to listen to your heart, true happiness can blossom. And this is my heartfelt wish for all of you here and for everyone we come into contact with. Understand your heart. Do not ignore it. It is a powerful force, and it has an intelligence way beyond your intellect that's not obvious, and your heart knows how to make you happy. So look after it. Thank you.
And now our guest from Brahma Kumari organization wish to felicitate our dignitaries. Thank you. May I request our GM Sri Pati sir to deliver vote of thanks. Sir.
Respected Divine Sister Brahma Kumari, respected EDs, CGMs, HODs, Commandants ASF, present here, my colleagues and friends. It is indeed a proud privilege to propose a vote of thanks before this August gathering. It is indeed a proud privilege to propose a vote of thanks before this August gathering on such a learning occasion like this one, offered and blessed by Sister Gopi and her team today. We sincerely acknowledge our deep sense of appreciation and gratitude to Divine Brahma Kumari Sister Gopi and her entire team for being voluntarily vulnerable to share their knowledge, thoughts and experience with regard to such a contemporary yet relevant topic of today. Thank you and namaskar, Divine Brothers and sisters. We are confident this program will definitely contribute towards overall enhancement of our personal as well as organizational effectiveness as it was envisaged. Organizing learning experiences of such magnitude here could not have been possible without the blessings of all our beloved EDs, CGMs and head of units. Additionally, making themselves available physically here exhibits our organizational seriousness to promote personal and organizational effectiveness. Thank you, sirs, for being a part of this learning and development event and gracing this occasion. It will not be out of place to offer here our special thanks to EDP&M for providing us this opportunity, encouragement and support to organize this event. Our thanks to all my colleagues and friends here for blessing us with your presence and taking out your valuable time to attend this program. As no program can become successful with a single person, so I extend my big special thanks to CCM HID and my HID colleagues, team and volunteers from P&A area, communication engineering, PR, air conditioning, horticulture department, etc. for their active support and effort. Finally, thank you all for making this event successful with your wonderful collective contribution. Thank you. Thank you all.
दौड़ते हैं देश की रगों में हम, खुले कदम सदे न बेतले कदम, रोशनी है कि हमने उन्नति की दास्तां सब तरफ लिखी हमने, हौसलों से आसमां में उड़ेंगे हम, जुड़े हैं धरती से हमेशा जुड़ेंगे हम, नींव में देश की, देश चढ़े, देश बढ़े, छाती चौड़ी हम करें, देव की शपथ है ये रातों में स्टील।
Especially, I wanted to explain this is a gift. Yes.
is a motivational slogan.
Down in that way.
It says I don't disturb anyone. Don't